I was sitting in a coffee shop reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother that made my blood run cold. Charlotte, effective immediately, you are no longer part of this family. Any further communication must go through my attorney. Do not contact me or your father again. No preamble. No explanation. Just a clinical dismissal after 34 years of being her daughter, delivered like I was a problematic employee being terminated. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I just stared at those words for maybe 15 seconds, then typed back one word, okay. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. I opened my banking app, navigated to the recurring payments section, and systematically canceled every single transfer I'd been making to support my parents' lifestyle. The mortgage assistance I'd been covering for 18 months. The utility bills on autopay from my account. The car insurance I'd taken over when Dad claimed he couldn't afford it. The home healthcare aide I'd hired for Mom's back issues. The grocery delivery service. All of it, gone with a few taps on my screen. If I'd been disowned, then so had my financial support. 48 hours later, my phone started ringing at 6 in the morning with 17 missed calls from my mother, and when I finally answered, her voice was pure panic. What have you done? Everything bounced. The bills are overdue. How could you do this to us? I took a slow breath and said in the calmest voice I could manage, you told me to communicate through your attorney. I'm just following your instructions. I'm Charlotte, and this is the story of how my mother tried to disown me as a power move and accidentally freed me from 34 years of financial and emotional abuse I'd been too blind to recognize. Let me take you back to the beginning, because that text message didn't come from nowhere. It was the culmination of a lifetime of my mother using money, guilt, and family obligation as weapons to control every aspect of my life and punish me whenever I stepped out of line. I grew up as an only child in what looked from the outside like a comfortable middle-class family. My father worked in middle management at an insurance company. My mother was a stay-at-home parent who ran the household with the precision of a military operation. Everything had rules. Everything had expectations. And deviation from those expectations came with consequences. From the time I was young, my mother made it clear that I existed to reflect well on her. My achievements were her achievements. My failures were personal embarrassments she had to endure. When I got straight A's in elementary school, she'd tell relatives I make sure Charlotte studies every night. When I won a spelling bee in 5th grade, she told everyone I drilled her on those words for weeks. I wasn't a person. I was an extension of her, a project she could take credit for when things went well and distance herself from when they didn't. The financial control started early too. When I got my first job at 16 working at a bookstore, my mother insisted I deposit my paychecks into a joint account so she could teach me about money management. Except the management consisted of her deciding what I could and couldn't spend my own earnings on. When I wanted to buy a laptop for school with money I'd earned, she said it was frivolous and that I should save for real emergencies. Those real emergencies always seemed to be things she wanted. New furniture for the living room. A vacation she'd been planning. Repairs on her car that somehow my minimum wage paychecks needed to contribute to. When I got into college, I received a partial academic scholarship that covered about 60% of tuition. I was so proud, thought my mother would be thrilled. Instead, she calculated exactly how much I'd need to earn and borrow to cover the rest, then told me I was being selfish for choosing a school that wasn't fully funded. We can't afford to help you, she said, even though they'd been saving in a college fund since I was born. If you insist on going to this school, you'll have to figure it out yourself. I worked 3 jobs during college. I took out student loans. I graduated with $30,000 in debt and a degree in accounting. My mother's response when I walked across that stage? Finally. Now maybe you can start helping around here instead of just taking. Taking. I'd worked myself to exhaustion to avoid asking them for a single dollar, and she framed it as me taking from them. But the real financial entanglement started when I got my first professional job at 23. I was hired as a junior accountant at a decent firm, making $42,000 a year. It felt like a fortune compared to what I'd been living on. I got my first paycheck and immediately called my parents, excited to share the news. My mother's response: "That's wonderful, Charlotte. Your father and I were actually hoping to talk to you about something. We're having some trouble with the mortgage. Just temporary, you know how these things are. Could you help us out for a few months? Maybe $1,000 a month until we get back on our feet." I should have asked questions. I should have wondered why they were having mortgage trouble when both of them had steady income. I should have set boundaries. Instead, I said yes. Because they were my parents, and that's what family does, right? That temporary assistance became permanent. $1,000 a month turned into $1,200, then $1,500. Always with promises it was almost over, that they were just waiting for my father's raise or for some investments to pay off. 3 years into this arrangement, I was still sending $1,500 a month to my parents while living in a studio apartment and eating ramen because I couldn't afford better. Meanwhile, my mother posted Facebook photos of their vacation to the Bahamas and their newly renovated kitchen. When I gently asked about the renovations and how they could afford a vacation while I was helping with the mortgage, my mother got cold. "I didn't realize we needed your permission to live our lives, Charlotte. We've sacrificed everything for you. Is it really too much to ask for a little help now that you're on your feet?" Sacrificed everything. I'd paid my own way through college. I'd been financially supporting them for 3 years. But somehow I was the one who owed them. The pattern continued as I progressed in my career. I got promoted to senior accountant at 28, then to accounting manager at 30. Each raise was met with my mother finding new expenses I needed to help cover. The car insurance went up. "Could you take that over? Your father's medication isn't covered anymore. Can you add that to what you're sending? The property taxes are killing us. Just a little extra would make such a difference." By the time I was 32, I was sending nearly $3,000 a month to my parents. $3,000 of my hard-earned income, going to support people who lived in a fully paid-off house, took regular vacations, and never seemed to actually be in the dire financial straits they claimed. I started asking questions. Wanted to see the bills I was supposedly helping with. Wanted to understand where their own money was going if they needed so much from me. My mother's response was always the same: "How dare you question us? After everything we've done for you? We don't owe you explanations. Either you help your family or you don't." So I kept helping. Kept sending money. Kept believing that this was what good daughters did. The emotional abuse was harder to quantify but just as damaging. My mother had this way of making every conversation about her, every achievement of mine about how it affected her, every decision I made about whether it aligned with her vision for my life. When I got engaged to my partner Alex at age 31, my mother's first response wasn't congratulations. It was, "Finally. I was starting to think you'd never settle down and give me grandchildren. We need to start planning immediately. I'm thinking a spring wedding, at the country club, about 200 guests. I'd wanted a small ceremony. Maybe 50 people, outdoors, casual and intimate." But my mother steamrolled right over my preferences, insisting that people would talk if we didn't have a proper wedding. The wedding planning became a nightmare. Every decision I tried to make, my mother overruled. The venue, the colors, the guest list, the food, everything. When I pushed back, she'd cry and say I was ruining the happiest day of her life. Her life. Not mine. Hers. The final straw on the wedding came when I found out she'd invited 40 people I'd never met, her friends, her distant relatives, her former coworkers, and expected me to pay for their plates. "Mom, I can't afford to feed 40 extra people. We're already over budget." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before planning such an expensive wedding," she snapped. I'd planned a budget wedding. She'd turned it into an expensive one. But somehow it was my fault and my financial responsibility. Alex and I ended up eloping. We flew to Hawaii, got married on a beach with just us and 2 witnesses we met that morning, and it was perfect. The most authentic, joy-filled day of my life. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. When she finally broke the silence, it wasn't with an apology. It was with, "I hope you're happy. You humiliated me in front of everyone." They all asked about the wedding and I had to admit my own daughter eloped without even telling me. The marriage itself became another source of conflict. My mother hated that Alex and I were equals in our relationship, that we made decisions together, that I didn't defer to a husband the way she'd always deferred to my father. When Alex and I bought a house, my mother criticized everything about it. Too small, wrong neighborhood, bad investment. When I got promoted to director of accounting at age 33, she told everyone it was because the company probably needed to fill diversity quotas, not because Charlotte is exceptional. Every success was diminished. Every choice was questioned. Every boundary I tried to set was met with guilt and accusations of being an ungrateful daughter. But I kept sending that money. $3,000 every single month, for years. Because cutting it off felt impossible. Because she'd convinced me I owed her. Because walking away from family felt like failure. Then came the incident 3 weeks before the text message that changed everything. My mother called to tell me she and Dad were buying a new car. Not a practical sedan or a modest SUV. A luxury vehicle. $45,000. "That's great, Mom," I said, genuinely happy they could afford something nice. "Well, we'll need you to co-sign the loan since your father's credit took a hit last year." I paused. "Co-sign? Why can't you just buy it outright if you can afford a $45,000 car?" "Don't be ridiculous, Charlotte. Nobody buys cars outright. But we need a cosigner for the best interest rate. If you need a cosigner, maybe you should consider a less expensive car." The line went silent. Then my mother's voice turned to ice. "I cannot believe what I'm hearing. We have sacrificed everything for you. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, gave you every advantage. And now when we ask for one small favor, you refuse? After we've never asked you for anything?" Never asked for anything. I was sending them $3,000 a month. "Mom, I send you $3,000 every month. I've been supporting you financially for over a decade. I don't think co-signing a loan for a luxury car you can't afford is a small ask. That money is the least you could do after everything we've invested in you. Do you have any idea how much it cost to raise you? You owe us, Charlotte. And if you can't even do this one thing, then maybe we need to reconsider our relationship." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Reconsider our relationship? Are you threatening to cut me off if I don't co-sign this loan? I'm saying that family helps family. And if you're not willing to help, then maybe you're not the daughter I thought you were. I didn't co-sign the loan. I refused, held firm despite the emotional manipulation and the guilt trips and the silent treatment that followed. For 3 weeks, my mother barely spoke to me. Short, clipped responses to direct questions. No returned calls. No family dinners I was invited to. I kept sending the $3,000 though. Because even in the middle of her punishing me, I was still trying to prove I was a good daughter. Then came the text. The cold, formal dismissal. "You are no longer part of this family. Any further communication must go through my attorney." And something in me just broke. Or maybe it finally healed. Because instead of the panic and desperation I'd have felt even a week earlier, I just felt relief. She'd finally said out loud what her actions had been showing me for years. I wasn't her daughter. I was her ATM. And now that the ATM had refused one transaction, I was being discarded. So I typed OK and I meant it. Then I opened my banking app and I started canceling. Every recurring payment. Every automatic transfer. Every bill I'd taken over. Everything. The mortgage assistance, cancelled. Saved me $1,800 a month. The utilities that were somehow in my name, cancelled. Another $300 a month. The car insurance I'd been covering, cancelled. $200 a month. The home healthcare aid, cancelled. $800 a month. The grocery delivery service my mother claimed was medically necessary, cancelled. $400 a month. The lawn service, cancelled. $150 a month. The subscription services, the pharmacy co-pays, the random emergencies I'd been covering, all cancelled. In total, I was sending my parents nearly $4,000 a month in various forms. $4,000 of my income every month, to support people who'd just told me I was dead to them. I sat in my home office and I cried. Not because I was sad they'd disowned me, but because I was grieving all the years I'd wasted trying to earn love from people who only valued my bank account. Alright, let me be real with you for a second. Thousands of you are watching this video right now, hearing about how my own mother disowned me over money, and most of you won't even hit the like button. You're consuming the most painful moment of my life like it's entertainment, but you can't take 2 seconds to engage? That's exactly what my mother did, took everything I gave and acted like I owed her more. If you're different, prove it right now. Like this video. Comment below. Show me you're not just here to take. Alex came home from work and found me at my desk, spreadsheets open, calculator in hand, looking at all the money I'd just freed up. What are you doing? They asked. Calculating how much of my life I'm getting back, I said. $4,000 a month. $48,000 a year. For over 10 years. That's nearly $500,000 I've given to people who just disowned me via text message. Alex sat down next to me, looking at the numbers. You've been sending them $4,000 a month? Sometimes more. I didn't tell you the full amount because I knew how insane it sounded. Charlotte, that's a down payment on a vacation home. That's retirement savings. That's your entire financial future you've been handing over to them. I know. I know that now. For 48 hours, I heard nothing from my parents. Radio silence. I wondered if they'd even noticed the payments had stopped, or if they were so confident I'd come crawling back that they weren't even checking. I used those 48 hours productively. I called my bank and had my name removed from any accounts that were joined with my parents. I called the utility companies and explained I was no longer responsible for those addresses. I called the insurance company and had my parents removed from the policy I'd been paying. I also called a lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue, but because I wanted to understand my legal standing. The lawyer was clear: you have no obligation to support your parents financially. All of this was voluntary. They can't sue you for stopping voluntary payments. If your mother actually has a lawyer, which I doubt, that lawyer will tell her the same thing. What if she tries to claim I owe her something? For raising me or something? Parents have a legal obligation to support minor children. Adult children have no obligation to support parents except in very specific circumstances involving elder care, which doesn't apply here. You're completely protected legally. That conversation was worth every penny of the consultation fee. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just finally stopping doing something that had been hurting me. On the morning of the third day, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. My mother's number, which I hadn't blocked because some part of me wanted to see how long it would take her to notice. 17 missed calls by the time I woke up at 7. Voicemails that progressed from confused to annoyed to panicked. Charlotte, I think there's been a mistake with the bank. Call me. Charlotte, this is getting ridiculous. Several payments have bounced. Call me immediately. Charlotte, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to fix this right now. Your father and I are going to be charged late fees. I listened to all of them over my morning coffee. Didn't return a single call. At 8 a.m., she called again. This time, I answered. Charlotte. Finally. What have you done? Everything bounced. The mortgage payment, the utilities, the insurance, everything. The healthcare aide showed up and we couldn't pay her. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I took a slow sip of coffee. I'm not sure I understand the problem, Mom. You disowned me 3 days ago. You said any communication had to go through your attorney. Why are you calling me directly? Silence. Then, don't be smart with me. This isn't about that text message. This is about you sabotaging us financially. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just no longer paying your bills. You told me I wasn't part of the family anymore. So I stopped acting like family. You can't do this. We have arrangements. We have agreements. We had an arrangement where I voluntarily sent you money every month. You ended our relationship, so I ended the voluntary payments. It's pretty simple. Charlotte Marie, you listen to me. No, Mom. You listen to me. I have spent over 10 years sending you thousands of dollars a month. I have supported you financially while you took vacations, renovated your house, and bought new cars. I have sacrificed my own financial security to keep you comfortable. And the moment I set one boundary about cosigning a loan, you threatened our relationship. Then you followed through on that threat. You disowned me. So congratulations, you got what you wanted. You don't have a daughter anymore. But you also don't have a bank account named Charlotte. You're being incredibly selfish and cruel. We're your parents. We need that money. Then maybe you should talk to your attorney about it. Like you instructed me to do for any communication. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful. For the first time in my entire life, I'd set a boundary with my mother and enforced it. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. The voicemails continued throughout the day. My father called, his voice tired and defeated, asking me to please work this out with your mother. My mother's best friend called, telling me I was breaking my mother's heart. A cousin I barely knew called saying I was being talked about at family gatherings. I blocked them all. What I didn't block was my cousin Rebecca, the one person in my family who'd always been honest with me. She called that evening. Charlotte, I need to tell you something. I probably should have told you years ago. What is it? There's a family group chat you're not in. Has been for about 5 years. Your mom, she talks about you in it. About how easy you are to manipulate. How she just has to mention money troubles and you open your wallet. She's literally called you the walking wallet multiple times. My stomach turned. Are you serious? I have screenshots. I'll send them to you. I should have said something sooner, but I didn't want to cause family drama. But after what she did, after she actually disowned you over not cosigning a car loan, I can't stay quiet anymore. You deserve to know how she really talks about you. The screenshots came through 5 minutes later. Messages from my mother to various family members, spanning years. Charlotte sending the mortgage payment again. I swear that girl will believe anything I tell her about our finances faced with tears of joy. Asked Charlotte for an extra $500 for emergency dental work. Actually going to use it for the new patio furniture. She'll never know the difference. Charlotte refused to cosign the car loan. Can you believe that? After everything I've done for her? I might need to cut her off for a while to teach her a lesson. There were dozens of messages. Years of my mother bragging to family members about how easily she could get money from me. How gullible I was. How I never asked questions. And not a single person in that chat had ever told me. They'd all just watched her exploit me and said nothing. I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer. I want you to have these. Just in case. The lawyer responded within an hour, this is evidence of financial exploitation. If she tries any legal action, these prove intent to defraud. Save everything. Over the next week, the consequences of my financial withdrawal became clear. The utilities were shut off at my parents' house for 3 days before my father apparently paid them from their own account. The home healthcare aide quit after not being paid. The mortgage payment was late, incurring fees. My mother tried different tactics. Anger, you're a terrible daughter and you'll regret this. Guilt, your father is sick with stress over what you've done. Bargaining, if you just help us for one more month, we'll figure something else out. Threats. I'll tell everyone what kind of person you really are. None of it worked because I didn't engage. I'd said everything I needed to say in that one phone call. Anything else was just giving her ammunition. 2 weeks after the disowning text, my mother showed up at my house. I saw her through the window, standing on my porch looking smaller and older than I remembered. For a moment, just a moment, I felt that old familiar pull to fix things, to make her happy, to be the good daughter. Then I remembered the screenshots. The walking wallet comments. The years of manipulation. And I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "We need to talk," she said, her voice gentler than before. Not apologetic, but softer. "I don't think we do. Charlotte, please. This has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Can we just move past this?" "Move past what, exactly? You disowning me? You spending years manipulating me for money while mocking me behind my back? Which part should I move past?" Her face flushed. "I never mocked you." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Watched her face go from pink to white as she read her own words. "Who sent you those?" she asked, and the question told me everything. Not "those are fake" or "I didn't mean it that way." Just concern about who had exposed her. Doesn't matter. What matters is I know the truth now. I know that for over a decade, you've been treating me like an ATM while laughing about how gullible I am. I know that the financial emergencies were mostly fabricated. I know that you never needed my help, you just enjoyed having control over me. Charlotte, you're twisting things. Mom, I have a printed list of every payment I've made to you for the past 10 years. It totals $473,000. Nearly $500,000 I gave you, thinking I was helping family in need. But you weren't in need. You just liked spending my money more than your own. I handed her the printed spreadsheet I'd prepared. Watched her eyes scan the numbers, the dates, the totals. "This is what you're walking away from," I continued. "Not a daughter. A revenue stream. And I'm done being that for you. You wanted to disown me? Fine. You succeeded. But you also freed me from the obligation I felt to keep supporting you. So thank you for that text message. It gave me permission to finally stop." "I didn't mean that text," she said quietly. "I was angry. You have to understand, I was so hurt that you wouldn't help with the car. I'd been sending you $4,000 a month and you were hurt I wouldn't take on more debt for a luxury car you couldn't afford. Do you hear yourself?" She had nothing to say to that. "I'm done, Mom. I'm done with the manipulation, the guilt trips, the financial exploitation. I'm done trying to earn love from someone who only values my bank account. You wanted me out of the family? Congratulations. I'm out. But I'm taking my wallet with me." I stepped back into my house and closed the door. Locked it. Walked away while she stood on the porch. She knocked a few more times. Called my name. Eventually left. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to my mother since. Haven't sent a dollar. Haven't responded to the occasional messages that still come through relatives. What I have done is rebuild my financial life. That $4,000 a month I was sending to my parents? I split it between aggressive debt payoff, retirement savings, and a vacation fund. I paid off my student loans completely. $30,000 that had been hanging over me since college, gone in 4 months. I maxed out my retirement contributions for the first time ever. Watched my 401k balance actually grow instead of staying stagnant while I funded my parents' lifestyle. Alex and I took a 2-week trip to Italy, something we'd been postponing for years because I couldn't afford it while sending thousands to my parents every month. I started therapy to work through the decades of emotional manipulation and the complex feelings about cutting off my family. My therapist helped me see that what my mother did was financial abuse, that my guilt was manufactured by years of conditioning, and that choosing myself wasn't selfish, it was survival. I joined a support group for people estranged from their families. Heard stories that made mine sound almost tame. Met people who understood the unique grief of mourning a relationship with someone who's still alive. The hardest part wasn't the estrangement itself. It was unlearning all the programming my mother had installed over 34 years. The voice in my head that said I was being selfish. That said I owed her. That said good daughters don't abandon their parents. But slowly, that voice got quieter. Replaced by a new voice that said I deserved better. That said my money was mine to keep. That said I didn't owe anyone access to my bank account in exchange for basic familial love. Some family members have tried to reconcile us. She's your mother. Life is short. Family is everything. But here's what I've learned: family is supposed to be a source of support, not a source of exploitation. Blood relation doesn't give someone the right to manipulate and use you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. My mother sent me one email about 3 months after the door incident. It was long and rambling, but the core message was clear. I'm sorry you felt hurt. I never meant to make you feel used. I hope you'll reconsider cutting off your parents over a misunderstanding. Sorry I felt hurt. Not sorry she hurt me. Sorry I felt it. Never meant to make me feel used. But the screenshots proved she knew exactly what she was doing. A misunderstanding. As if $473,000 of financial exploitation was just a miscommunication. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She wasn't actually apologizing. She was doing what she'd always done, minimizing my feelings, rewriting history, and trying to manipulate me back into compliance. I'm done being manipulated. My life now is quieter. Smaller in some ways, fewer family gatherings, fewer obligations, fewer people. But it's also richer. I have money to save. I have energy to invest in relationships that actually fulfill me. I have peace that comes from not constantly wondering what financial emergency will come next. Alex and I are talking about having kids in the next few years. And I promised myself that my children will never be treated the way my mother treated me. They'll never be made to feel like their worth is tied to their usefulness. They'll never be exploited financially while being mocked behind their backs. Breaking the cycle of abuse starts with me. And it started the day I typed OK in response to being disowned. People ask if I miss my mother. The honest answer is complicated. I miss the mother I wish I'd had. The one who would have been proud of my accomplishments instead of jealous. The one who would have supported my dreams instead of using them as leverage. The one who would have loved me unconditionally instead of transactionally. But I don't miss the actual woman who raised me. I don't miss the guilt trips, the manipulation, the constant financial demands. I don't miss feeling like I was never doing enough, never giving enough, never being enough. What I have now is better than what I lost. And that tells you everything you need to know about the relationship I walked away from. My mother's text said I was no longer part of the family. What she didn't realize was that she'd actually given me the greatest gift she'd ever given me, permission to stop trying. For 34 years, I'd been trying to earn her love. Trying to be good enough, successful enough, generous enough to finally receive the unconditional acceptance I desperately wanted. That text freed me from that impossible task. It showed me clearly that nothing I did would ever be enough because the problem wasn't me, it was her. So yes, she disowned me. But in doing so, she lost her walking wallet. Her steady stream of income. Her financial safety net that she'd been exploiting for over a decade. And I gained something infinitely more valuable. My freedom. The 48 hours between her disowning me and her panicked phone call weren't just about canceled payments. They were about the shift in power dynamic. For the first time in my life, I had the power. I controlled the money. And when I stopped giving it, she had to face the consequences of her choices. There's a particular kind of karma in that. In her trying to punish me by cutting me off, she actually cut off her own income source. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about defying her. Instead, she taught herself a lesson about taking people for granted. I'm not angry anymore. I was for a while, furious, actually, at the years wasted and the money given and the love withheld. But anger takes energy, and I'd rather spend that energy building a life I'm proud of than dwelling on what I can't change. What I am is free. Free from obligation, from guilt, from the constant anxiety of wondering when the next financial emergency would come. Free from trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. And that freedom is worth more than the $473,000 I gave away over the years. I can't get that money back. But I can make sure I never give away another dollar to someone who doesn't value me. My mother texted, "You are no longer part of this family," thinking she was punishing me. I replied okay and started living my best life. She panicked 48 hours later when she realized what she'd actually done. But it was too late. Because for the first time in my life, I'd finally learned that I don't need people who only want me for what I can provide. I'm Charlotte. My mother disowned me to teach me a lesson, and I took the lesson to heart. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you need to let go of first. And I've never looked back. We're at the end of this story, and I need to be honest with you. Hundreds of thousands of people will watch this video. Most of you will watch the entire thing, hear about my mother financially exploiting me for over a decade and then disowning me when I finally set a boundary, and you won't do anything. You won't subscribe. You won't comment. You won't share this with someone who needs to hear it. You'll just take this story like my mother took my money, without giving anything back. And that's exactly the kind of relationship I finally escaped from. So here's your chance to be different than she was. Subscribe to this channel right now. Leave a comment telling me if you've ever been financially exploited by family. Share this video with someone trapped in a similar dynamic. Or just keep scrolling and prove that most people really are just takers. It's your choice. But at least have the self-awareness to recognize what you're doing. Now I want to hear from you. Have you been financially exploited by family members? Have you had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? Have you cut off toxic family and rebuilt your life? Tell me your story in the comments because sharing these experiences helps others recognize they're not alone. And subscribe to this channel because I'll continue sharing stories about family financial abuse, setting boundaries that people hate, and learning that walking away from blood relatives doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you someone who finally understands their worth.